I received a question from Ray, who indicates he works for a municipal electric company in Florida. He has a 17-year background as a lineman and recently started working in the vegetation management area. And he's trying to find information on plant growth regulators, specifically to use on bamboo and cabbage palms. And he says, I would like to know what, if any, plant growth regulator is suitable, cost-effective, and per label instructions for limiting the growth of various bamboos and cabbage palms. You hit on a key piece there, Ray. It needs to be as per label instructions, and I don't believe you'll find those species on the tree growth regulator labels. The tree growth regulators today, I think we're down to basically one, paclobutrazol, sold under some various trade names. There were a couple of other ones around back, being tested in the late 70s and into the 80s. But in trying to deliver and get the tree growth regulator into the tree, injection things were used, and alcohol was used as a carrier, and that proved problematic in that it had an impact, a negative impact on the trees. The holes had to be drilled in the trees and then the material injected into the trees. So there was a negative consequence that way, and perhaps an even bigger negative consequence was simply the public perception around going around drilling holes into the tree to do the injection. So today I think it's down to just the paclobutrazol that can be applied as a soil injection or soil drench. And as I said, I don't believe that those species are listed on there. Now, that's not to say that it wouldn't work. When you say something like bamboo, with the phenomenal growth rates that it has, it suggests that gibberellins are very active in it. And most of the tree growth regulators are gibberellin inhibitors. So on the surface, it would suggest that there's a good possibility that tree growth regulator would work, but it really would need to be researched, as there are many different forms of gibberellins in different places where things can be blocked and so on. And so without that testing, it's impossible to say. Now, given it's not on the label, that's really your route, would be to go to one of the manufacturers and ask them if they'd be interested, because you see it as, you see these as species of commercial interest and value for growth regulating, and see whether or not they'd be willing to cooperate with you, undertake some research, and try to get it on the label. They may do sort of look to see how big is the potential market and so on, to make a determination whether or not they want to pursue it. I mentioned that probably the gibberellin inhibitors would be effective. I did come across one paper doing a little bit of research using maleic hydrazide, and it was successful. Now, maleic hydrazide, Ray, is a plant growth regulator that has been around for a long time. Boy, it's been a long time since I was at university, but if my memory serves, maleic hydrazide, commonly called MH, was used for, probably still is used for sprout inhibition in potatoes that are being stored. It had been tested. There was some attempt to look at it as a tree growth regulator with mixed results. It was effective for some species, not effective for other species, and then there were some species that showed a considerable amount of toxicity, And so for that reason, it really wasn't pursued any further. You can appreciate, utility trying to deal with tree growth regulator like that. They really wouldn't want to take a chance of having a very, very negative impact on landowner trees or municipal trees and getting themselves into a liability associated with that. So, of course, they would, as happened, they just stepped away from that. And that opened the door for some of the other tree growth regulators. But as I say, I believe we're down to, there may be different trade names, but it's basically down to one due to the easier application method with the soil injection or soil drench. That's all the avenues I really see open for you is, as I mentioned, is to approach the manufacturer and see if they'd be willing to pursue that. And if they say no, then I'm afraid, Ray, that would be the end of the road for you. Thanks for your question.